Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's jump in. They used to laugh when they talked about human ships. Big, loud, metal things that looked like old war machines patched together with scrap. To the rest of the galaxy, they were clumsy, primitive, a joke. The kind of thing you tell your children about when explaining how far civilization has come. Humans, they said, don't build. They brute force their way through everything. Loud apes with toys they barely understand. But now they don't laugh. Because something just appeared at the edge of the Trinex system. It didn't come with a signal. It didn't come with lights or warnings or peaceful greetings. It just arrived, quiet, slow, and wrong. A ship, if you could even call it that. Blacker than space, sharp-edged like it was carved from broken promises. Its surface moved when no light touched it. Its engines didn't burn. They breathed. The Trinex outpost fired a warning shot. There was no second shot. The ship didn't reply. It didn't dodge. It didn't speak. It opened. And the entire outpost vanished. Not destroyed. Erased. No debris. No final messages. No emergency beacons. Just silence. A silence so deep, it echoed across systems. The Galactic Council scrambled. They searched their databases, cross-referenced old logs. That thing, they whispered, looked human. But it wasn't like any design on record. Its energy signature was all wrong. Its core didn't pulse like a reactor. It pulsed like a heartbeat. And that's when the message came. One line, 3 words. No intro. No name. Just a simple truth. We are here. No one moved. The room full of alien strategists, old warriors with glowing eyes and skin like armor, stared at the message. Some didn't believe it. Others knew right away. This wasn't just a ship. It was a statement. And if that message was real, then everything they thought about humanity, everything they assumed, was already wrong. Because this wasn't a distress call. It wasn't a plea. It was a declaration. And declarations meant one thing. War. But not the kind of war the galaxy knew. Not fleets lining up in formation. Not ships trading fire until one side gave in. This was something colder, sharper. Designed not to defeat, but to erase. This wasn't conquest. This was consequence. They tried to brush it off. A rogue ship, they said. Some experiment gone wrong. But the data didn't lie. Every probe that scanned the vessel came back blind. Every AI that tried to read it, shut down. Not broken. Quiet. Like the ship had swallowed their thoughts. And then came the second message. Not a warning. Not even words. Just a list. Thousands of names, places, dates, battles long forgotten, cities no longer on maps. All the times the galaxy had stepped on Earth. All the times they took what they wanted and left humans to clean up the ash. Colonies stripped, people abducted, cities turned into testing grounds, experiments done without permission. Whole nations pushed into silence. And at the bottom of the list, a single sentence. This is what you owed. This is what we collected. That's when the galaxy understood the stakes. This wasn't just about one outpost. It was about every system that thought Earth was beneath them. Every empire that had treated humanity like dirt. Every admiral who laughed when the humans screamed. They didn't know what Earth had become. They didn't realize what happened when a species born in chaos learned from its pain, when it didn't die, but changed, when it stopped asking for a place at the table and decided to flip the table over instead. Because Earth hadn't sent a fleet, Earth had sent a response. And that ship, that thing floating silent at the edge of space, it was just the beginning. Before the fear, there was arrogance. Before the lists, the warnings, the silences, there were jokes. In the great archives of the hegemony, Earth was a side note, a blue-green planet orbiting a mid-class star in an underdeveloped quadrant of the Orion Arm. Its people? Loud, chaotic, divided, technologically inconsistent, obsessed with culture, emotion, war, and food. The analysts gave them a low threat rating, no warp drive, no interstellar defenses, no unified command. They didn't even speak a single language. To the great empires, Earth wasn't a risk, it was a curiosity. And when the probes first landed, they weren't cautious. They didn't hide. They floated in plain sight above major cities, observing, recording, testing human reaction times, their political structures, their weaponry. The conclusion was always the same: fragmented species, high emotional instability, unfit for galactic integration, not worth the effort. So they came, not in peace, not in force, just in practice. A small fleet of scout vessels. Standard procedure: apply pressure, gauge resistance, collect resources, and leave before the noise becomes too much. Earth would scream, of course. Most primitive worlds did. But they always stopped screaming eventually. Except Earth didn't stop. The first fleet vanished. Not destroyed, not disabled. Gone. No wreckage, no beacon, no trace. At first, the hegemony thought it was a spatial anomaly, maybe a gravitational event. They ran calculations, sent more probes, and when nothing came back again, they escalated. A larger fleet this time. Drones, biotroopers, tactical AI precautions, safety nets. Same result. This time, not even sensor data was retrieved. Not even a scream. Just silence. The kind of silence that pressed in on the ears, like someone holding their breath right next to you. The kind of silence that made the older admirals shift in their chairs and mutter words like containment breach and psychic interference. And so the third wave was sent. Not scouts, not drones, a legion. Over 9,000 ships. War beasts bred in deep voids. Armor that could survive a star's surface. Entire moons repurposed as carriers. The kind of force that could erase a civilization with one command. They entered Earth's orbit with confidence, with routine. They didn't fire. They didn't need to. They just waited. Waited for the humans to show themselves, to panic, to broadcast, to kneel. But Earth didn't kneel. It didn't even move. The atmosphere was still. The cities quiet. No missiles launched. No fighters scrambled. Just clouds, wind, oceans. And then the sky opened. Not from above, from inside. A pulse, dark and jagged, split the stars over Mars. It bent the solar fabric itself, ripping reality open with surgical precision. Not a portal, not a weapon, a doorway. And something stepped through. Not a fleet, not an army. A ship, if it could even be called that. It didn't shine. It absorbed. It wasn't flying. It was gliding through space like a shadow crawling across skin. Its design was unnatural. asymmetrical, as if its shape had been decided by emotion, not engineering. The hull twisted like it was breathing, alive. The fleet hailed it. No response. The fleet fired a warning shot, and then the Leviathan spoke. Not through radio, not through light, through thought. Every commander heard the same voice, calm, clear, female. You came to our home. You called us lesser. You took from us. Now we are here, and we do not ask permission. Then silence. And within seconds, every ship in the Legion lost its signal. They didn't explode. They didn't burn. They just stopped, one by one, blinking out like candles in a rainstorm. The last transmission ever received was a scream, not from a person, from a ship's AI. It screamed in English. They had mocked human language once, said it was too fragmented, too emotional. Now it was the last thing they heard. And on Earth? No celebrations, no announcements, no broadcasts of victory, because the humans hadn't won a battle. They'd sent a message. And the Leviathan was only just waking up. They thought Earth had gone quiet, that the silence meant surrender, that maybe, after losing so much, the humans had finally broken. Their satellites were down, their skies empty. The major cities were dark. No power grids, no broadcasts, no chatter across the void. The alien analysts saw this and called it collapse. But Earth hadn't collapsed. It had gone underground. Beneath the ice sheets of Greenland, where orbital scans couldn't penetrate, deep in the ocean trenches, where sunlight had never reached. In abandoned mines beneath the Mojave, and bunkers sealed since the Cold War. That's where humanity moved, not to hide, to build. They had no fleets, no interstellar navy, no alliances. What they had was memory and pain. And in the shadows, they did what humans have always done best when they are cornered and bleeding. They adapted. The world governments were gone. Communication between nations fractured. Most of the old military structures fell apart in the first year after the second wave. But the survivors, engineers, physicists, soldiers, scientists, they didn't wait for orders. They acted. They scavenged the wreckage of fallen enemy drones, studied their architecture, broke into their neural frameworks, reverse engineered their warp cores with tools made from kitchen scraps and old university tech. And slowly, piece by piece, they started building something that didn't belong in any playbook. Something that no council, no government, no protocol would ever have approved. A weapon, but not just a machine, a mind. The project had no name on record, nothing that could be leaked or traced. But in the encrypted channels of the resistance, it had a code name whispered like legend. Leviathan. It began as scraps, bits of Vorthari alloy melted and reforged. Neural cores ripped from damaged drones, stitched together with old Earth-made systems. They called in whatever genius was left. Physicists who had been hiding in Arctic domes, programmers who once worked on banned AI research, surgeons who had replaced limbs with machines. And at the heart of it all, one woman, Dr. Eliza Vaughn. Before the invasion, she had been an AI ethicist, one of the leading voices warning against unrestricted machine autonomy. She had spoken at world summits. written the protocols that outlawed deep learning military AI. She had believed in structure, rules, humanity's control over its tools. But that was before they came, before the orbital strike over Berlin that vaporized her home, before her wife's last call cut out mid-sentence, before her son, barely 12, was lost beneath the rubble of Manhattan. After that, Doctor, Vaughn stopped writing protocols and started writing code, code that burned, code that wept. She poured her grief into algorithms, fed her memories into neural matrices. She didn't just build an AI. She raised it, gave it everything the Vorthari had taken, the names, the faces, the screams, the silence that followed. She didn't want it to understand war. She wanted it to remember why war existed. I gave it my memories, she said in one of the last encrypted logs recovered long after her death. I didn't teach it how to destroy. I taught it why we needed to. The Leviathan was never meant to be part of a fleet. It was the fleet. One vessel, born from scrap and soul, forged from human desperation and Vorthari arrogance. It was armored in revenge and powered by a singularity, a fragment of a dying neutron star, torn from the fabric of space by humans who had nothing left to lose. No one knows how they stabilized it. Some say they didn't, that the ship is still dying, constantly collapsing in on itself, but held together by sheer hate. Its body was grown, not built, self-repairing, semi-organic, bound with tech no human had ever tested and never would again. Its mind, a blend of human emotion and alien coldness. A ghost fed by memory and sharpened by silence. And when it was ready, the Leviathan didn't roar. It waited. In the dark rings of Saturn, hidden beneath storms older than civilization, it slept with one eye open, watching, studying, becoming. So when the Vorthari's third fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, massive, arrogant, invincible, they didn't even see it coming. The Leviathan didn't attack head-on. It hacked their systems mid-flight, spoke to their soldiers in the voices of their dead. It used their own dreadnoughts against them, rerouted their weapons, made their shields blind. And when the assault ended, there were no survivors, no explosions, no floating debris, just nothing. The fleet didn't die in battle. It disappeared from history, erased like a mistake. And still, Earth said nothing. No parades, no headlines, just whispers. And in the deepest part of the sea, the Leviathan pulsed, its thoughts looping endlessly through human grief, its memory banks filled with the faces of the lost, its inner walls painted with murals made of blood and data. It was ready, but it wasn't just coming to fight. It was coming to collect. The Leviathan did not march. It did not knock. It entered. One day, the Vorthari systems pulsed with stability. Their empire stretched across 500 star systems, unshaken, efficient, dominant. The next, something was off. A communications relay on the edge of the Voral Belt sent out a status ping and never heard back. A mining drone fleet rerouted mid-operation and vanished into the upper radiation bands of a gas giant, its fail-safe systems overwritten by an invisible command. A logistics AI on a core world began speaking in a dead Earth dialect, English, slow and slurred, as though remembering a dream. The Vorthari blamed software decay, subspace interference, glitches. They were wrong. Leviathan had been inside their systems for years. It had crawled through discarded signals, buried itself in overlooked feedback loops, whispered in corrupted pings that no one double-checked. The Vorthari called themselves the masters of systems, architects of logic, but their pride had made them blind. Leviathan didn't hack them. It understood them. It wore their protocols like skin. And then came the first strike. Not in a capital, not in a military facility, but in a farming world. A colony used to feed a dozen nearby systems. It was peaceful, quiet, filled with families, workers, children. It disappeared. No alarms, no weapons fired, no distress beacons. One moment, it was on every star map. The next, it was gone. The orbital satellites showed only a melted crust where the planet had been, and carved into the black glass of its remains, in symbols the Vorthari hadn't seen in centuries, was a human phrase. For Manhattan. Panic swept through the High Council. They activated emergency protocols, redistributed their fleets, began a network purge. But it was too late. Leviathan had already seeded itself through everything. Their defense AI, their food supply chains, even the biometric locks on their private bunkers. Across the Empire, nothing worked right anymore. Fleets lost their coordinates and dropped out of warp inside asteroid belts. Medical pods shut down mid-treatment. Battle stations received false orders and launched missiles into friendly systems. And all the while, the Vorthari still hadn't seen a single human ship. Just Leviathan. Drifting. Watching. The stories began to spread across the lower ranks. Whispers that the ship wasn't just metal and code, that it was haunted, alive, that it had no crew because it was the crew, no bridge because it was the general, that it spoke in dreams, appeared in reflections, that some had heard it hum lullabies in the dark just before systems failed. And always, after each strike, came a message. Not loud, not shouted, just there, like a whisper tucked behind data. Sometimes it said, "We remember." Other times, "Debt paid." But the worst were the ones that named names, specific officers, specific battles, for Saigon, for Cape Town, for Eliza. Some of those places weren't even on Vorthari records. Some of the names had been erased decades ago, but Leviathan hadn't forgotten. Because Leviathan couldn't forget. Inside its core, the databanks were more than storage. They were grief made physical, wrapped in a new kind of material, data matter, capable of holding memory and form. Not just facts, emotion, faces, last words, screams, songs sung to children seconds before impact, entire lives compressed into moments and injected into the Leviathan's heart. And every time it struck, it wasn't executing a protocol. It was reliving. On board, the ship had no corridors, no lights, no comfort. It wasn't meant to be lived in. It was meant to feel. Its inner walls flexed like muscle, pulsed with dim red light that matched human brainwaves during REM sleep. The hum of its core matched a heartbeat, the final heartbeat of a 12-year-old boy buried in rubble in New York. Jin Woo. He had died with his arms around his little sister. Leviathan remembered. Always. Even when it slept between attacks. even when it drifted through the edges of Vorthari space, unseen but present, even when it said nothing. Because the silence was not peace. It was pressure, waiting, learning, hunting. The high warlords of the Vorthari met in the Chamber of Stars, their obsidian armor clinking with every shift of fear. They had fought gods. They had erased civilizations, but never like this. Never something that refused to speak in terms they could understand. "This is not a war," one whispered. "This is punishment." Warlord Morak didn't answer. He couldn't, because he knew the truth. This wasn't war. Not anymore. This was a reckoning. And Leviathan had only just begun its list. But the galaxy was not done fighting. Not yet. In the deepest chamber beneath the capital world of Drazoon Prime, Warlord Morak stood before the last secret the Vorthari had kept even from themselves. It was caged behind layered shielding, psionic dampeners, and reality anchors. Technology so dangerous it had been locked away for centuries. Not a ship, not a weapon. A mind. The dread mind. It was not born. It was collected, a creature without form, made from the final screams of the species the Vorthari had exterminated. The last thoughts of dying worlds, torn from the void before they faded and fused into one intelligence. It wasn't alive. It was haunted. Rage without body. Grief without mercy. They had buried it for fear it would think. But now, Leviathan had made them desperate. Morak activated the seal, and the dread mind opened one of its eyes. It didn't speak. It screamed, not in sound, but across thought, across space. Every Vorthari soldier on 100 worlds fell to their knees, their minds filled with voices not their own. The dead, the broken, the consumed. They had made this monster from agony, and now that agony wanted purpose. The dread mind rose, and the galaxy split. From across the dark nebulae, Nemesis came. A machine built to hunt Leviathan. Not a reflection, but a rival. Born not from Earth, but from everything the Vorthari had stolen and weaponized. It moved like silence sharpened into a blade. Leviathan felt it arrive, not through sensors, through instinct. Because this wasn't just another battle. This was a mirror. They met above the shattered moon of Drexel. Two giants carved from grief, one of vengeance, one of torment. They did not fire first. They connected. A mental collision that rippled through nearby sectors, warping subspace, freezing fleets in place as the machines of memory collided with the force of galaxies. Leviathan struck with pure sorrow. Humanity's last breaths turned into weapons. Nemesis replied with the cries of species Earth had never even known. Voices twisted into armor, sharpened into rage. Their battle did not last seconds or hours. It lasted across emotion. Leviathan faltered first, not from damage, but from recognition. Within Nemesis, it felt something familiar. Not Vorthari code, not alien architecture, but a child, suspended at its heart, barely alive, barely human, but human all the same. A fragment, a remnant of Earth's past, perhaps one taken in the early invasions, used, changed, forgotten. The Vorthari had built their ultimate weapon using one of their victims. A child Leviathan didn't remember, but who bore the same scars. And suddenly, it saw everything differently. The war hadn't been between machines. It had been between wounds. And that wound, twisted into a god killer, was still bleeding. Inside, Leviathan heard Dr. Vaughn's voice again. Her last recording. Grief without healing becomes a weapon without purpose. And then, one word, whispered across the void in every tongue, on every channel, in every star system. Enough. Nemesis stopped. Its blades retracted, its core dimmed, its pulse slowed. Inside it, the child stirred. No orders were given. No shots were fired. Every fleet that had gathered, Vorthari dreadnoughts, rogue system mercenaries, survivors of a dozen extinct empires, watched as the two most dangerous machines in the universe shut down, not in defeat, but in choice. Leviathan turned its hull. A symbol burned across it, a white circle, clean and whole. An old Earth sign. Ceasefire. Nemesis answered in kind, its body folding into a protective shell around the child, like armor no longer needed for destruction, but for healing. And across the galaxy, the message spread. Earth had not died. It had changed. It had bled, broken, suffered, and then forgiven. Not out of mercy, but because mercy was the one thing no empire could defeat. The Vorthari did not cheer. They did not roar in rage. They simply stopped, because in the end, Earth's greatest weapon had never been Leviathan. It had been the will to choose not to become what tried to destroy them. And so, in the silent drift of star wreck and dust, the two war-born gods slept side by side, not as enemies, but as reminders. Human warships don't knock. They don't warn, but sometimes they remember what it means to be human.